Thank you so much, both to Alice and Rumi, for such a wonderful and warm welcome. You never quite know what the practitioner is going to say before you get up here, and you're so happy when it's in alignment with what you've written, right? So perfect. Thank you. So this month, you've been exploring the art of power. And today we are going to look at empowering a world that works for everyone. And when I heard that theme, what dropped in for me was as it arises, then it arrives. As it arises, then it arrives. And I thought, curious. Don't you just love it when you get teasers from the universe? You're not quite sure what it's saying, but you know it's calling you for a journey. So I want us all to be pilgrims today and take this journey together and see what arises. I did just get back from a wonder-filled extended journey to France and spent significant time in the magic and mystery of Chartres Cathedral and its world-famous labyrinth. And this place has been a destination for pilgrims throughout the centuries. And I want to share that the biggest lesson I took from the entire time being there at Chartres and in the labyrinth is that all you ever need to do is take your next step. All you ever need to do is take your next step, and that will find your center. Okay? So isn't that comfort in that simplicity? I just want us to rest in that for a moment. Let us just take a breath together right here and repeat that. All we ever need to do is take our next step, and we will find our center. Just breathe for a moment. Because, see, it's such a ginormous idea of empowering a world that works for everyone. But really, all we ever need to do individually is take our next step. It only matters that we engage with it authentically, not that we engage in it perfectly. And that will lead us home. So let us start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. I know, I could sing, but I won't. And for me, it is the foundation upon which I find my center in this teaching, from which I always turn to, anchoring and embodying that I am starting from and seeing with the lens of oneness. Okay? So when we truly do that, we are standing in the fundamental truth of our teaching. And that is, we can never be against. And I know I brought this up last time I spoke, and I'll bring it up every time I speak, because it's the very first place that we get to start from, that we need to start from. Because when we are not against ourselves or each other, then we are in alignment with the universe. Okay? So again, what is against one? Right? If there's only one candidate running, who's running against them? Nobody. It takes two, and two creates separation. So here we get to infuse ourselves again with Ernest's famous quote from his Sermon by the Sea, right? Find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his soul, and I will find you another Savior, another Jesus, an exalted human being. So this call is our first choice point to pivot into our power. We're always at choice, and we can always pivot. And in that, we can choose our power. Okay? Because it is not enough to just talk about oneness. The invitation is to take the next step of living oneness, which will empower a world that works for everyone. Yet being for and not against is a tremendous shift from our human self and away from the normal worldview. I mean, seriously, people go to school. People go to school to learn how to use scarcity in the cloak of affluence so that we fight against each other, right? People go to school to learn how to market, that tell us that there's not enough, so that we will move from scarcity and to be against. This is what we're up against here, right? So this just one thing, think about it, this one thing to get our internal coordinates in proper alignment with a greater truth takes a continuous commitment to practice. Okay? Just to begin to see things rightly, that we are not moving against, that we are in alignment with for. And that's why we're called practitioners, right? Because we practice again and again and again. We're not arrivingers. We don't arrive. We practice. Okay? So I'm not talking about being on a mat somewhere in some quiet, serene room doing your practice with candlelight and incense. No, I'm talking about right here, right now, midstream, mid-flight, being able to pivot and choose our power again and again. At the grocery store, especially at the grocery store. Have you ever been walking around and all of a sudden you hear the subliminal message that's coming down the pipe? Flu season, COVID shot. Most of us aren't even aware that that's taking place, but it's affecting ourselves and our body. So this practice is needed and necessary everywhere and in all of our relationships and all of our experiences. And when we start to practice in this way, we move away from the collective consciousness. Ernest called it the race consciousness, right? It's kind of the stream that everyone's floating in. And we begin to ever so slightly glimpse at what Jesus was trying to relate to us with this quote from John 8:23. You are from below, and I am from above. You are of this world. I am not of this world. Okay? So when I listen to that, what I hear is an invitation to awaken to our choice point, to pivot into our power. He is inviting us not to see from what is around us, but from a higher view, a different perspective, to be in this world, but not of it. Okay? Which is why I believe it was very difficult for people to comprehend most of what Jesus was saying. And looking around, I'm not sure much has changed in 2,000 years. Right? I'm serious. Okay. So I have a confession. I've been binging Jesus. I have. I never thought I would, but I have been watching, yes, binging The Chosen. Anyone here watch The Chosen? Oh, now I have all these new recruits. Well, I certainly heard about it, and I knew it was the latest thing, but I just didn't think it was my thing, right? You know, I've never really been that into Jesus, you know. Well, it turns out it has been very, very fascinating to watch this series. From my perspective, this is actually one of the main points it makes over and over again, that very few people were understanding what the heck Jesus was talking about. Even his disciples, maybe especially his disciples. Because he was talking from a perspective of above, which is what I would call, and how I see in our language, principle. A higher truth that we don't recognize in the conditions around us, okay? And most people, myself included, this isn't a judgment, this is just an observation. We are living from personal, bound by our limited minds, which are wired in fear to protect us. Yet they inform and infuse us to be against. Okay, so this is constantly taking place. We have our personal experience from where we live and the conditions around us, and yet there's this call to be above, to look from principle. When we live from below, We are restricted by only having our limited experiences to draw our conclusions from. Say that again. When we are living from below, we are restricted by only having our limited experiences to draw our conclusions from about the moment we are in. This is why I love neuroscience. And I invite you in to learn as much as you can because it perfectly aligns with our teaching. And there's so much there that we can learn from it. Okay? In deepening our understanding of how our brain is wired, listen, we've come to understand that the brain is actually predictive. Okay? And that is because it's the best use of its most precious resource. It does not want to use too much glucose, as if there isn't a lot of glucose around anymore, right? But this is actually what's true. So most of the time, unless we are consciously present and responding to the moment, we don't actually read the room for what it is. We predict into the room. Think about it. We predict into the room from the catalog of what we have already seen, done, felt, and experienced in the past. That's astounding. That's a point of power right there. Like, how often are we actually in the present moment reading what is true versus predicting and projecting from what we've already had? And what's even more sad is that all of our narrative and our stories come along with that. So most of us, most of the time, are actually not responding to the moment. We're reacting to the past. Let's take a breath here. This is really important. And that little bit that I just said is just the tip of the iceberg. So what I say to everyone and I always say this to clients, there's a fantastic podcast, Hidden Brain. Watch it, listen to it. It goes over and over all these things that we're learning about the brain and how it relates to our experience in the moment. So, a master teacher such as Jesus is inviting us to respond from a higher perspective, from above, and not to react from below, which is a limited library basically bound by our past patterning of fear. Breathe that in. I know I can get going here. Yes, it's a survival mechanism for evolution, and it keeps us from truly engaging in the moment that we are in. So yes, it was what we needed to survive and to evolve, but it's keeping us limited from this precious present moment. So most of the time we are actually not even here. And how does that affect another significant tenet of our teaching? Here in my third quote, I share Ernest saying, life will mirror and reflect back to the thinker what he thinks into it. Okay? So I think when I heard that download, that this is another way of saying when it arises within us, then it arrives around us. Okay? First it arises, here's the kicker, it either arises from above or below. Our choice. Then it arrives in and as the world around us. Powerful choice point to pivot in each and every moment. We have the power to choose the lesser or the greater. To be a space for capital T truth, to get a foothold in our consciousness and in the reflection of our consciousness in the world around us. Do you see? Or not. For you see, it is done unto us as we believe. Okay, so let's slow down for a minute. Let's stay curious. As it arises, so it arrives, is not only a personal practice, which it is, And it's the very tenet of what I believe Ernest was calling us forth to do, what Jesus was calling us forth to do. It is also resonates with our new understanding of quantum entanglement. Okay? I got this from Quantum Physics for Dummies. They actually have books, Quantum Physics for Babies. I thought, oh, that must be me, but no, it's literally to teach to your babies. I'm like, all right, well, let's start teaching it when they're young, right? Okay. The idea that particles can instantaneously influence each other, even when they are spaciously separated from each other. Okay? In 2002, the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded for this new understanding of entangled particles. This is a theory that has been proven, even though we don't fully understand it. All right? So this is how we begin to empower a world that works for everyone. See, when we stay above, not only do we change our personal experience and perspective, the micro, we can and do change the larger, broader macro experience just by landing it, okay? Just by being it, just by embodying it. This is our choice point to pivot into our power. From all the waves of possibilities, what particle are you going to choose? Because everything's a wave until we make a choice, and then it becomes a particle. We're not living into this idea in the collective consciousness. This is freedom. Okay? This aligns perfectly with all that we've been studying and all that Ernest has been teaching. So from above, from principle and infinite possibilities, or from below, from personal, from past probabilities. Remember, this is an inside-out job. It's never outside in. As it arises, then it arrives. Not outside in. That's like looking in a mirror and saying, I'm not changing until you change. We laugh, right? We think it's ridiculous. But that's what we're doing all the time. We are constantly looking outside for confirmation for our affirmation. Think about it. Next time you do that, see yourself standing in front of the mirror. I'm not moving till you move. What does the mirror say? Well, we're going to be here a long time. Because it doesn't happen. Okay? All right. I'm going to breathe a little. I'm going to bring in the next layer. Okay? So what are we talking about? We're talking about our decision and our coordinates to be for and not against. And then we're understanding that that which is outside of us is a reflection of us inside. And that when we take that choice, then we affect the wave of the global wave. Okay? So what's our next step? We're in the labyrinth. We're taking our next step, right? We don't have to know it all. We just have to take our next step. We must make space to receive this new reflection. We must make space to receive this new reflection, this new creation. Okay, Tagore. I was trying to pronounce his name, but I'm just going to go with Tagore, a Bengali poet, writer, and philosopher who I learned when I looked this quote up, just so happens to be the first non-European to win a Nobel Peace Prize in literature. His quote hints to what I'm speaking to. Everything that belongs to us will come to us if we create the capacity to receive it. Yeah, breathe that in. Talk about the first one being a place to rest. Everything that belongs to us will come to us if we create the capacity to receive it. This is a pivot point, and it's the choice of possibilities. If only we had the capacity to receive it. Okay, this may sound radical to you, but I actually believe here is the weakest link in our teaching. The ability to receive. How little we talk about receiving. How empowering that actually is. If there's only one, everything's already here. I actually don't need to create anything, right? But the ability to receive it. Okay, I'm back to Jesus again. So watching The Chosen, and in this most potent episode, Jesus is in the field performing miracles. Okay, I mean miracles, right? That would make us just to stop in our tracks. And the disciples are circled up at camp, and it begins. How long is he gonna be doing that? I mean, how long is he gonna be healing? What about us? What are we having for supper? He's not even thinking about what we're going to eat. I'm tired of sleeping on the floor. And I'm watching this and I'm going, this really, really hit me, okay? Even with the disciples having Christ, the Christ consciousness, right there, they still couldn't receive him. They still could not receive him. Their minds still wanted to kvetch and complain and see what wasn't there versus being in the awe of being in the presence of an enlightened being. And I mean, it hit me hard. I started bawling right there in my living room. And my husband's like, what is going on now? Okay, I'm not kidding you. And the bell that struck is still resounding in me. You see, we can know everything. We can know everything. We can know the Bible. We can know the Quran. We can know the Torah. We can know Ernest Holmes, the Eightfold Path of the Buddha. We can do everything. We can pray at dawn and fast for 40 days, sacrifice for our sins. And we can even be in the midst of the most enlightened teacher the world has ever seen and not receive it. Just breathe. How often have you not received the holiness that is around us? The beauty, the fall, the bounty, the colors, the joy. To allow that into ourselves, that allows it to arise within us and arrive around us and flourish. You see, I think it's all about letting it in and letting it begin. Because if everything that belongs to us will come to us, then certainly the God, the Spirit, the holiness of which we are inside of and a part of and belonging to is already here. When my husband asked me, why in God's name are you crying as you're watching this show? And I couldn't stop because I just thought, do you know how many times I have thought to myself, if Jesus came and knocked on my door, okay, I guess I do think about Jesus sometimes. If Jesus came and knocked on my door, would I really be willing to drop everything and follow him? Right now, everything, let go of everything and follow him. And I've doubted that I've been able to do it. But the truth is, he is knocking. God is here. We don't have to do anything. We can just receive it. Receive it. And the invitation is here for all of us. That was his biggest message. It's not anyone, no one is excluded from this call of love. And it's right here, right now. So I'll wrap it up as I share one of my favorite Sufi poems. It's right on my door as I walk out. I read it a lot. Go sweep out the chamber of your heart. Make it ready to be the dwelling place of the beloved. When you depart out, he will enter it. In you, void of yourself, will he display his beauties. Let's go right into prayer. Let's let that ruminate and circulate, percolate in and through our cells and our systems, our muscles and our molecules. That right here and right now, there's no waiting. There's nothing to do. We already are. It already is. We get to welcome in this love, this light, this truth, this freedom, and a world that works for all. And I declare that anything that is blocking or hindering, separating or segregating us from this truth, that it is now dissolved and resolved. It goes back to the nothingness from whence it came. For we are seeing on high. And we grant that full permission to be our vision always and in all ways. Oh, I accept this. Yes. And I expect it. For I know that as we align in this design and release it onto the law, that it can and shall not return back void. It does and must and is multiplied and magnified. Oh, I say yes. I come into full agreement and alignment here and now with this truth. For in the one, I know it's already done. It's already here. It's already now. We just let it in and let it be. And so it is. So it is. Whew. Yeah, so I had one more slide that I couldn't quite find my way in. So I'm going to ask us to, wherever you are, do a power pose. Remember when Oprah did like, find your power pose? Okay, because that's part of our cells and our system. As I embody my authentic power, I become a world that works for everyone. And so it is. Woo!